In this film, we are going to take a tour along the lanes of Smarden in search of the places and people, some of them recent, others centuries old, which make our village such an interesting place. As we go along, we'll be discussing the old names which our farmers gave to their fields. Oh, and yes, we'll be dropping in on Germany and North America on the way. Field names, and every field has one, tells us so much about the history, topography and the farming ways of our village as it was nearly 200 years ago. We are fortunate in being able to trace them on our old village map, but some names are far older, such as these, going back to the origins of settlement in the Weald, when pigs were brought here to be fattened, but the location of these three is now lost to us. In 1841 there were about 100 farmers in Smarden and 1,650 fields. Of these, 69 of them, located on different farms, had the same name, Hassock Field. The word hassock refers to the soft clumps of grass found on wet soil, so this was clearly a common feature of the landscape at that time. Among the interesting characters we are going to tell you about are entertainers, sportsmen, novelists and craftsmen, some with local reputations and others who are known worldwide. We'll start our tour from the church and head towards Pluckley along the street and up to Mortman's Hill. The first houses on the right were laid out in the 1600s to a formal plan, with narrow alleyways separating each of the similarly sized buildings. Our first stop is the old schoolhouse on the left, which was home to Thomas Hogben in the 1700s. He was master of the school there, which had been established with money left by Stephen Dadson. Dadson's Trust is still helping Smarden people today. Hogben was also a surveyor, a skilled map maker and a noted producer of sundials, including one still at Leeds Castle. By the mid-1800s the house had become so decrepit it was considered unfit, and the new school was built further along the street. Across the road is Dragon House, with its unusual carvings. No one knows for sure what they represent, although it might be worth noting that the richest man in Smarden in the late 1500s was known as Dragoner. Next comes the pump, which was installed to mark Queen Victoria's Jubilee in 1897, and was one of 6 in the village. However, for many people, the pond behind the Chequers was their water supply, said to be clear and sweet. Town Barn, further along, once the market house, is where Smarden's fire engine was once kept. There is an identical engine in Tenterden Museum. In the garden of a cottage in the street, a hoard of over 100 medieval coins was discovered a few years ago, some dating from the 13th century, including coins from England, Scotland, Germany and Venice. In the 2008 Smarden Big Dig, when 100 schoolchildren and parents carried out excavations in the village centre, masses of pottery was discovered, some dating from the 12th century. Next we come to Perrin House, which has been home to clockmakers, including Thomas Perrin, who installed the first church clock. The stretch of road between Perrin and Jubilee House was made in the early 1800s. So was the straight stretch leading up to Mortman's Hill. The cut up to Monk's Hill on the Biddenden Road was made at the same time. These were all improvements carried out to shorten the old winding road, when a toll road from Biddenden through Smarden and on to Charing was set up. Gate Cottage at the top of Mortman's Hill marks the position of one of the toll gates. The S-bend in the Pluckley Road, just past the Charter Hall, was once called Kettle's Corner, after Edward Kettle, who lived at Stanley House. He was a coach builder who built carriages in his workshop, which still stands behind the house. Queen Victoria was one of his customers. Mill Lane off the Pluckley Road is named after the East Mill, which was a smock mill built in 1804 and last worked in 1923. The sweep's gone by then and the mill driven by an engine. The post mill on the Biddenden Road was much older. It was here in the 1600s, but might be older than this. That old mill finally fell down in 1953. Further along Pluckley Road we come to Lude Lane, a name which has given rise to much speculation. It is undoubtedly a very old name and might derive from the Old English word meaning lower. Howard Williams of Basil Brush fame used to live in Lude Lane. This is them in 1982.
Oh, it's my Auntie Bertha.
Your Auntie Bertha? What has she got to do with high seas?
She sells them in the cinema, doesn't she? High seats! High seats! Get your high seats here!
It has nothing to do with your Auntie Bertha or your Uncle Charlie or your Auntie Molly or your sister Fred.
I haven't got a sister Fred. What are you talking about?
Today's story is about Pepper and some pirates.
Oh, I like them, Mr. Howard. All those coloured feathers and those big yellow beaks. Who's a pretty boy, then? Who's a pretty boy? Who's a pretty boy? Talking about big yellow beaks.
Pirates, not parrots.
Oh, all right.
Just past here on the Pluckley Road we come to Baker's Bridge. This was originally Beggar's Bridge, a name which someone decided to gentrify, in the same way as Stinking Pits Lane, off the Bell Road, had become Rosemary Lane. Now let's head back again to the village centre and make our way along Water Lane. The lane takes its name from the frequent flooding of the river Belt. Like many rivers, Belt is an extremely old name, having Celtic origins, which makes it older than the name Smarden. The Old Irish word beol means water, and there is the Buil, now called the Boyle, in Ireland, the Beela in Westmoreland, and the Bewley in Inverness, all words from the same root. The celebrated photojournalist George Roger, whose pictures of the Belsen concentration camp shocked the world, lived here with his wife Jinx in the cottages they restored. During the war, his photographs of the Blitz brought him to the attention of Life magazine, for whom he worked in Africa, France, Belgium, Holland and Burma. Later, his scenes of the people and landscape of Africa appeared in the National Geographic and other magazines and newspapers. He was a founder of the Magnum Photo Agency. George Roger died in 1995. Let's take a few moments to appreciate some of his work, firstly of Smarden in the 1960s. Just opposite, Captain John Noel, born in 1890, was once resident at Hartnup House, which he restored. He lived a very colourful life and was part of the 1924 Everest expedition as a climber and photographer. He adapted cameras for use in extreme cold, which were carried by the climbers Mallory and Irvine, who both died in the attempt. One of these cameras, still lost somewhere on the mountain, may contain the answer to the question, did they reach the summit? Here is a clip of the remarkable film he made about the expedition. Further along, off Water Lane, a young man called Bob Day spent his summers at Little Ash singing while he worked picking hops. He later became part of the Allisons duo, who nearly won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1961 with this song.
Goodbye, goodbye, farewell, farewell, I'm not sure what to do. So long, au revoir, it's hard but I'll pull through. Are you sure you won't be sorry comes tomorrow? You won't want me back again to hold you tightly. Now are you sure it's not your foolish heart that you won't grieve if we're to be apart? You will see as time goes by, we'll grow lonely, you and I, dreaming of each other, and we'll cry.
The author and artist Mervyn Peake lived at the top of Water Lane. He wrote the novel Gormenghast, which was published in 1950. This 1932 self-portrait hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. Turning right opposite the Bell onto the Headcorn Road, we come to Monk's Farm, where Kent cricketer Peter Richardson lived. He played 34 Test matches for England and was Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1957. Around the corner, where the big cat sanctuary now stands, is Gallows Field. And opposite that is Watch House. These two places are on the boundary of the ancient administrative area known as the Cale Hill 100. Here a watch would have been kept, and a gallows may well have stood here, no doubt to remind strangers to behave themselves. Heading back to the Bell Road and on towards Pluckley, we find some interesting names. On Dodge Farm there is Black Pit Field, where evidence of iron workings have been uncovered. This clay bloomery was dated to 180 BC. Nearby, the name Cold Harbour, previously called New Harbour, suggests a Roman presence. They would have been attracted by the iron found in the Weald, a fact noted by Julius Caesar. We have an increasing number of Roman coin finds in Smarden to support this idea. Likewise over at Romden where numerous Roman artefacts have been found, we have Black Field, another reference to the darkened colour of the soil in these fields, the slag still found in them being the legacy of the old ironworkings. Further along the Bell Road, closer to Deering Woods, is a field named Square Butts. The word butts comes from the targets used in medieval times for archery practice. Now let's go back to the village centre and head along Cage Lane towards Biddenden. Now here's a face you know. The award-winning TV journalist, author and newscaster Ben Brown grew up in Cage Lane. He was born in 1960 and went to Sutton Valence School. He has reported on major world events such as the fall of the Berlin Wall and the wars in Kosovo and Iraq. His father, Anthony Brown, was a newscaster for ITN in the 1960s. The fields opposite the Flying Horse once were the scene of a famous horse race, held here every year on the third Monday in July. Top jockeys from as far as Newmarket came to Smarden to race here. The last of these races took place in 1852 and may have given the pub its name. The junction with Bethersden Road used to be called Doctor's Corner, home to several Smarden medical men. On the corner is Regency Cottage, once known as Ava House. This was home to Captain Peter Allen of the British East India Company, who fought at Ava in what was then Burma. He added the north front with its graceful veranda in 1848. A little further in the Biddenden direction, on the right, once stood Claggett House. This was home to an interesting family. The Smarden historian Halford Mills, who was born in 1843, lived here. His father Lewis built what we now know as the Gallery onto the front of Parsonage House, and Halford, in turn, was the father of Bertram Mills, who later founded, just to win a bet, the famous circus, which was regularly attended by royalty. Halford Mills had a checkered life, part success, part failure. We owe him a debt of gratitude for his invaluable handwritten history of Smarden, full of fascinating detail, now available in digitised format, and as an author of books on the River Belt, the Baptists, and another on family names. But his business ventures enjoyed mixed fortunes. He established a coaching service between London and Brighton, and then a travel company, offering guided tours by horse-drawn carriages through rural England. He placed orders for over 100 carriages with an American manufacturer in Oneida, but also manufactured some himself. This is a model he made, which was auctioned in America a few years ago. In the 1920s, describing himself as a farmer, he was declared bankrupt, finally being discharged in 1926. He also ran a funeral business and made arrangements to bring bodies home for burial after the R-101 airship disaster, in which 46 people lost their lives. He died in Smarden in 1931, and his grave is in the Little Baptist Burial Ground on Water Lane. Just off the Biddenden Road is a field called Flat Bell Rope, which was part of the bequest left by John Hampden in 1371 towards the cost of maintaining the bell ropes in the newly built church tower. Turning left along the Bethersden Road, we find some more field name humour. This tiny field is called 100 Acre. Close by at Haffenden is Tainted Field, and this is an echo from Smarden's cloth-making past. Tainted comes from the word tenter, which was a wooden frame used to stretch and dry cloth, giving us the phrase on tenterhooks. Those Flemish weavers who arrived here 700 years ago left traces of their dialect in the way we speak. So Smarden folk will pronounce place names such as Hamden, Romden, or Haffenden with the emphasis on the last syllable, in contrast to, say, Biddenden or Tenterden. Just off the Bethersden Road are several fields with workhouse in the name, and on the old Smarden map there is an uninhabited building there, which could be the old workhouse. Chessenden, opposite the Minnis, was once Smarden House, and probably another house for the poor or infirm. Gilbert Field, near Baker's Bridge, could be named after an Act of Parliament in 1792 called the Gilbert Union. This allowed Smarden to set up a workhouse, and the nearby town Field was probably land acquired by the village ratepayers to support the poor, sick or orphaned in the community. So as we end this short excursion, one question still remains. What have Germany and North America got to do with Smarden? Well, off the Bell Road is a field named Germany. And over at Mortman's Hill is a field named North America. And the explanation for both of these is that geographic names were given to those fields which were at the furthest distance from the farmhouse. Those old Victorian farmers had a nice sense of humour. Thank you for joining us, and if anyone asks, Germany and North America are right here in Smarden.